As a developer or architect, the first thing you need to do before writing a single line of code is to decide what type of system you're building. You have many different choices in Visual Studio 2005. In order to determine the architecture that's best for you, you'll first need to understand what your options are. Let's take a moment to review the different options. Later on, we'll write code and develop these types of applications in Visual Studio 2005. One option when choosing an architecture is a web-based architecture. You'd build a web-based architecture when you'd like a browser-based application that reaches many users. One major advantage to a web application is that your code is centralized in one place. This makes maintenance and code updates much easier than a desktop application. With Visual Studio 2005, you'd use ASP.NET 2.0. ASP.NET 2.0 uses the system.web namespace in order to work with web forms. You would choose ASP.NET when you'd like a thin user interface with most of the logic on the server. You'd also choose this when you want the browser to be the container for your application. ASP.NET is best suited for a connected environment. Most of the time, all the user needs is the browser to work with your application. Another architectural choice is a services-oriented architecture. Visual Studio uses web services for building services-oriented architecture. Web services leverage ubiquitous technologies such as XML and HTTP. In order to build web services that are standards compliant, be sure to use the add-in to Visual Studio, called Web Services Enhancements, or WSE for short. Now keep in mind, there's been a lot of press about web services, and be careful not to use them gratuitously. One of the #1 reasons for using web services is when you're working with a heterogeneous environment. A good indicator of when you should use a web service in a particular situation is when you encounter the word cross-platform, cross-language, or cross-firewall. When you encounter the word cross, it generally means that your data should be submitted in a standards-based format, such as XML. This is what web services do. Be judicious when using web services as they are serialized. This means on both sending and receiving points, the data is streamed in and out of text-based format. On each endpoint, this will take a little bit of time. If you know that your applications don't require this serialization, or if they don't require a standard XML-based format, then consider using binary transfer of your data instead. Another architectural choice is a desktop application. Visual Studio 2005 uses Windows Forms 2.0 for these types of applications. Why would you want to use a desktop application? You would use this when you want a robust user interface, or a performant user interface. This is because Windows Forms is able to cache data on the local machine. That way you can avoid costly round trips on the network to retrieve data. This is especially important if your server is remote. By leveraging the caching and the power of the desktop, you can guarantee optimal performance of your desktop applications. A desktop application is best suited for intranets or internal corporate networks, or any time when you can actually control the user base. This is because you'll need the .NET framework to run your Windows Forms components. Another choice is a device application. With Visual Studio, you would use the .NET Compact Framework 2.0 to work with device applications. The .NET Compact Framework 2.0 is used for PDAs and telephones or any other type of Windows mobile application. Windows mobile applications can run on all devices that include the Compact Framework. These include Pocket PC devices, as well as cell phones that are running the Microsoft smartphone platform. Another choice is a Smart Client application. This is actually a very popular choice these days, and many companies are opting for this model. There's a variety of different technologies you can use to build a Smart Client application. These include Windows Forms, the Compact Framework, and Visual Studio tools for Office. A Smart Client application is basically a hybrid of both a web application and a desktop application. It combines the best of both worlds, so you get the distribution and the greatest reach that the web offers, as well as harnessing the power of the desktop. Another advantage of using a Smart Client application is the fact that it's self-healing. Think of your instant messaging program. When an update is ready, you'll see a pop-up that says, "New updates are ready for your install." This is because the Smart Client, the IM program, has a handshake with the server. It knows when updates are ready on the server. Once the updates are ready, it either notifies the user or silently installs these updates on the local machine. This is exactly how Smart Clients work. The goal at Microsoft is one day to no longer have add-remove programs in your control panel and no longer have any pains of messy uninstalls or reinstalls. An important consideration when choosing a Smart Client architecture is, like the desktop, you'll need to have the .NET framework installed.